Thank you, Pat, for joining us.
Absolutely.
Many of us on the Citizens Advisory Committee, we're really not familiar with GBAD. So I'm hoping that you do all the talking here. Would like to know, what do you do? How are you organized? Where do you get your funding? How is that funding used? So if you could just give us kind of a background of the Greater Boise Auditorium District, we would be very grateful.
Sure, absolutely. And I appreciate the time, the opportunity to spend with you guys and get some clarification. So the district was actually, it's a statutory provision through the state of Idaho. 674901 is the Auditorium District legislation. And it was established in 1959 by the legislature. Currently, there are 3 auditorium districts, like 2 others like ours. One is Idaho Falls, the other is Pocatello. Pocatello has a building. Idaho Falls is still trying to get one built. Boise Center has been around since actually, we just celebrated our 30th anniversary, so we opened in 1990. And the way we're funded is 2 ways. One is a room tax collection, transient occupancy tax, TOT tax. Some call it a hotel tax, but it's actually the tax generated by any lodging facility within the auditorium district boundaries. It can be up to 5%, which it currently is. That's determined by the board. But again, it can be from 1% or none to 5%. Been at 5% since 1979, I believe. It actually, the room tax began collection early on. The district was established in 1959, so immediately started collecting room taxes back then, but we didn't have the building until 1990. It really was funding, it was used at that time to fund, through the chamber, it was funding the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Things changed over time, but we still contribute through a contract to the CVB. Right now, it's about $640,000 a year to help market the facility. And that's the key element, is that auditorium districts have to market their facilities. Last year was 8.3 million in room taxes. Prior year was 8. We've had record generated room tax collections or lodging collections since 2000 and right after the recession. So from 2009 through current, every year has been better than the prior year. Last year, again, 8.3 million, it was a record. This year, we're hoping to get about 4.5 million. Room taxes dropped to 125,000 in April. In May, they were up to 220, and in June, they were about 400,000, 416,000. So that's the primary way we're funded. And again, COVID has obviously impacted hotel occupancies and room rates. So that's why it's going to be significantly down this year. Our first 4 months were record months, both from a room tax collection as well as from operations. And that's the second way we're funded, is through operations of Boise Center, and the revenues generated within. The center actually operates at a loss because we carry a $1.7 million debt service on Boise Center East, the new expansion that we opened in 2016, and then pays all of our capital costs. Capital costs run $2 to $4 million a year. It sort of depends on the projects, but on average, probably around a couple of $1 million. So the district actually helps subsidize or underwrites the operations of Boise Center. Depending on the year, it can be between 1 and 2 million. But again, it really depends on capital expenses. Revenues at Boise Center last year, a record of almost $8 million. So again, operationally, we used to do about 4.25 back before we had the expansion. So we've actually doubled our revenues over the last few years. So there was pent-up demand for the space, and we built it, and thank goodness people came. So again, COVID is having a negative impact on us this year, but hopefully that'll come back after the first of the year for the convention side. We're already holding events. We held our first convention the first week of August. It was the Idaho Society or Idaho Association of School Administrators. We had 230 people in the building. The governor was here. Sherry Ibarra was here for part of the meeting. So again, we've proven that our protocols are working, and so we're able to get some business back in the building. Trying to think of anything else specific on the district I can fill in that gap on. It's there's a 5-member publicly elected board. Those elections are every other year, odd years. There's 6-year terms. So I believe next year, I think 21 Peter Oliver is singularly up, I think. But normally there's 2 board, it goes 2, 2, and 1. Again, so every other odd year we have an election. The auditorium district boundaries aren't like any other city, county, or jurisdictional boundary. It was the old Boise Junior College boundaries, and again established about 1959. So to the north, it's Floating Feather and Eagle. To the west, it's Eagle Road. To the south, it's Columbia Road. And then to the east, where Warm Springs and the highway intersect up by Lucky Peak is where that boundary is. But it zigzags its way all over the foothills because of the expansion of Boise and number of people that have created new subdivisions and that sort of thing. The one complaint we get is that people who live in a particular area, if one person's on one side of the street and I'm on the other side of the street, one of us can vote, and in some cases the other can't because of the boundary line. Anyone can change those boundaries. It's not something that we would do as a district, but there is a way to do it within the statute. Pretty complicated and pretty arduous and probably pretty expensive, quite frankly. But again, it can be done. Anybody in the community can initiate that. I report to the board, but all the rest of the staff at Boise Center reports to me in one form or fashion. So I'm the only true employee of the district. And again, I'm at the discretion of the board. So I've been with the district since September 1st of 2001. I had a 20-year hotel career before that. So coming up on a second 20-year career that I'm looking forward to reaching, I hope. So there were a couple of other questions that were sent in. Do you want me to go through those, or would you like to move forward?
No, please go right ahead.
First question was, what level of support is there from a community for a new sports stadium project? And honestly, that's not something for the district to decide. That's up to developers or some other, folks to determine if there's support for a particular project like a stadium. So we have the ability to fund projects that are part of 4902. An auditorium district is one to build, manage, maintain, operate, and market a facility, and it can be convention centers, stadiums, arenas, and facilities of like manner. So that's sort of a broad statement by the statute, and we've never really tested that. But so we can participate in projects, but we're not one to normally, do public studies unless it's directly, like I said, the convention center. Looking back, I don't think we ever really did a test to see if the public really wanted a convention center or whatever. There were some meetings back in the 1970s and early 1980s when they finally decided on a convention center, but otherwise that's really not our call. Again, what are the pros and cons of such a project? And again, that's to be determined by the public process, whatever that looks like. We look at it from the standpoint of, what's the benefit to the district of participating? We're fully supportive of the community, but the focus is economic impact. That's another part of the statute, is that it's the benefit of the citizens. But there's got to be an economic impact. At least that's been our protocol up to now. The other thing is that there's never been a formal project proposed to the board, ever. We've been involved with the stadium issue off and on since about 2006. There's just never been anything proposed. There's been a lot of talk about what the district can do, or a lot of talk about the district. Not a lot of talk to the district, and again, there's never been a formal proposal. I know that the current developers had done a CSL, Convention Sports and Leisure study, or had one commissioned back in, I think it was 2 years ago. Could be 3 at this point, but at least 2 years ago. But again, they commissioned that study by CSL, and we weren't a part of that. Where are the ideal locations for such a project? Again, that's not up for the district to determine. If someone has a project and they want us to participate, then they can certainly, approach the board. There's a process on our website for proposing a project, but to date, none has really been formally presented. What surrounding nearby uses are most compatible with or are needed to support a stadium? Again, not something the district determines. So that would be something that a developer works through with whatever other entities are involved. What projects have been proposed or have been considered that the district supports? We've actually had a few. Certainly the Boise Center East expansion was one that we're very proud of. We had generated, we had $45 million in the bank at the time. We had collected room taxes over the years, wanting a project. We had owned Parcel B, which is downtown here. Now it's where the Hilton Garden Inn, there's the Chipotle, I think it is down there, the chamber offices and the parking garage. So we own those 5 acres, purchased it in 2000 and sold it. I want to say it was probably 2014 timeline to Gardner. So we sold that piece of property, put the cash into Boise Center East. We paid cash for everything that we did at Boise Center East, with the exception of we did a conduit financing with CCDC on the ballroom building of Boise Center East. So we have a debt service of 1.7 million on that, and it's actually CCDC who owns it. And then we're on an annual renewable lease. We got that through a Supreme Court ruling, and that would take an hour on its own to describe. So, but we've worked with Shakespeare back several years ago when the Macy's building sold. We worked with Mark Hoffland a little bit, Dave Wally on that one to see if it would work. Nothing ever materialized on that. Several years ago, I was at a convention in New Orleans and met a gentleman from Greenville, North Carolina, who was the assistant city director, and they just built a new aquatic center. And that's a personal favorite of mine, actually, is an aquatic center, because I think it would do tremendous things for the community, but as well as for the district. But again, I've done some research on that, but nothing has materialized on that front. Have met with some of the folks from the Y, and again, we've talked about perhaps participating in their expansion plans, but that got put aside for right now. We worked with Esther Simplot, CCDC in the city, on a performing arts center. Did participate in a study on that. Project never took off because the Morrison Center was able to add their curtain wall on the upper deck, so it compressed the size of the performing arts venue. So it didn't have this massive feel to it that it would have had otherwise. I've talked with Block 22, who owns the Grove Hotel and the arena, about the arena space. I currently have interest. There's an empty restaurant space in Boise Center East in that part of the building. It's the last unoccupied space. And we want to buy that and convert it to meeting space. Because of the way the loan is written with the bank and Larry Norton, who currently owns those buildings, there's some challenges with trying to purchase that space outright. So not sure what that's going to look like. So we've been interested in other projects certainly over the years, but again, nothing formal has ever really materialized. I've sort of touched bases on how how we're funded and how it can be used statutorily. One of the challenges that we have right now is quite frankly our bonding capacity. With the changes in the amount of room tax revenue this year, that's going to have some negative effect on bonding capacity. The way it's done is bond ratings are looked at for your past 3 years of in this case, room tax revenues. And we were tracking exceptionally well. And then this year, like I said, we're looking at about 4.5 million. So there's debt service coverage we already have to have on Boise Center East before you get into the other funding. So we're going to be challenged on the bonding side for 3 years. So until about 2024. But we do currently have about 25 million, or I think we're at 23 million in the bank. There's a $6 million reserve fund that we're actually drawing from right now to maintain operations and staffing. There's another $6 million reserve fund that's set aside for to redo our ceiling in the ballroom. We were slating to that in 2022. It's a project I want to do. I think it's needed, but it's one that probably is going to get postponed given the circumstances. So there's a couple of other small reserve funds. So we probably have 10 to 11 million dollars right now that we could have opportunity with in cash. But like I said, it's the bonding capacity that's being challenged for the next couple of years. The statute also pretty much, like I said, limits the scope of how we're able to expend funds. For instance, housing or other projects that are outside the scope are not something that we've ever been allowed to do. If there's some ancillary projects that are tied to the stadium, and I guess I don't know what that would look like if there was some sort of one other project that I didn't mention that again could be tied was an indoor multi-purpose sports facility that we had looked at actually on when Bob Batista and I and when Rick Izaguirre was still a commissioner. We spent some time looking at what the opportunities might be for either a mini Boise Center to be put at the fairgrounds. Combine the facilities that the fairgrounds provides for exhibit space with some nicer meeting space, which is pretty much ideal. It's something we really don't have here currently even, is just hardscape exhibition space. So there was an opportunity to look at that. And again, this was several years ago. One of the things that my sales team and the CVB have indicated that we lack here is an indoor multi-purpose sports facility that you can have indoor volleyball, you can do weightlifting, you can have dance/cheer. You need the appropriate dressing rooms, locker facilities, that sort of thing that quite frankly we don't have here. But there's a demand, and that's what Pocatello actually built, was an indoor multi-purpose sports facility. And it's been very successful. They've had a lot of basketball tournaments and volleyball tournaments and that sort of thing. It can be used for, indoor soccer, lacrosse practice, indoor baseball practice, set up nets and that sort of thing. So that's another project that we've been interested in. And it's one Bob and I, throughout looking at potentially some soccer, lacrosse fields and indoor sports facility that can act as, locker rooms. You could do concessions. You could feed teams and that kind of thing. So again, something that it looked good on a napkin. Not sure reality, but again, it's the kind of thing that we can get involved with.
Okay, that's very helpful. If I understood you earlier, before you get to the proposal step, an organization or a developer, whoever has a proposal, can come talk to you first, kind of get preliminary ideas, and then you help review the project, maybe some altercations are made to it before a formal proposal is presented. Is that correct?
No, I probably didn't explain it as well as I had hoped. If, for instance, well, let's use the stadium project that was, that had been talked about several years ago. Initially, they wanted to, in fact, I don't even know at the time that they had the site that they wanted. But because our statute allows us to participate, people think automatically we can or we will. And that's not the case. They have to have a project developed to the point where it's designed. And so what they come to us for normally is funding, because obviously that's what we participate in. There are a couple of things that we'd like to see, I guess. I mean, one of them, when I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I was looking at, we flew out there a couple of years ago to look at their stadium project. And they have some meeting space up behind home plate. It's really cool. It's elevated deck and it's really cool space. And so that's something that, if we get involved, that would be an element. At that point, yes, we'd say, hey, we want to see this element in about this size and square footage. But otherwise, it's really the financing package that they have to propose. The stadium itself, I mean, it would depend on what part we really play. And this has probably been the difficulty all these years. You can't cherry pick what the statute allows us to do, where I talked about build, operate, maintain, manage, and market. That word "and" is key, and the Supreme Court ruled against Pocatello in 2010. It's called the Pokeball Ruling, where the Supreme Court said, no, you can't cherry pick one of those or two of those. You have to do all of them because of the word "and." So we don't have to own it, although in our case up to now with the facilities we currently have, obviously we want to own those. But ownership is a preference, not a requirement. And so again, it depends on the package that the developer would want to present to the board to say, okay, I'm not sure the district really cares what a baseball stadium looks like. There's criteria that would probably have to go into it. But honestly, again, it would depend on what the district was being asked to participate in. So if somebody said, well, we just want your money, it would say, okay, well, what's the financing look like, and what kind of studies have been done on these kind of facilities, and what kind of due diligence has been done, and then what's in it for the district. So there's got to be some, like I said earlier, there's got to be some kind of a return on the investment. For us as the district, it would probably look like room taxes. So what kind of room night generation can a facility like this generate? I'm not saying that's the only criteria, but that certainly is an important one, as it would be for any facility. That's why, quite frankly, I like the aquatic center. But that aside, I mean, that's why we have the convention center, because it attracts people from out of town, and that's what generates economic impact for the community, not just income for the district, but for the entire community. Last year, we estimate we generated about 26 million in economic impact for the valley. So again, we see ourselves as a pretty important cog in the wheel of success for the community. And that's why we want to be good community partners and good business neighbors. But like you said, in order for us to participate, we need to know what's really being asked. So whether, again, we're not experts in stadium or Shakespeare designs or anything else, but we certainly are interested in the role that we would have to play financially.
Sure. Thanks for that clarification.
Sure.
Ed, did you have any questions?
I don't. I just appreciate, Pat, your time, and it was very, very informative. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. If there's anything else I can do to help, or if there's other questions that come up, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Did you, I don't know if Kelly talked to you or not, we have another meeting coming up on the 26th of August.
She did.
Okay, great. Good.
And so just, and I talked to Kristen Mucko, who's my board chair, and she very much wants to participate as well.
Great.
So all we need is the details on I mean, will it be a format like this, and will there be Q&A, or is there something specific you'd like to see from us? Or that's what I need, I guess, is just any information that you all would like to see.
Okay, we'll get back to you on that. We've, we're recording these meetings
Right.
individually. They're going out to all the committee members, and then we're asking the committee members to submit questions. So we should be able to give you some more information when it gets closer to the meeting date.
Sure, no worries.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. We do appreciate it, and we'll see you on the 26th.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.